myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright.
Hi, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Delighted to say I'm joined by George Mitchell for another episode of Those Were the Days. And what season are we going to be looking at this season, George?
1958-59.
58-59, George. Well, on you go. We know how it works. You've sent me a lot of photographs to stick up, so I'm in your hands today, George.
Okay, Steve. 58-59. To those watching, what it mean to them? Well, if you went to the pictures, you're probably going to see Ben-Hur, one of my all-time favourite movies, as it happens. And if it's on Sky now, I even have a sneaking look at it, even all these years later. Music-wise, or the sad death of rock and roller Buddy Holly. And on telly, well, by now you're probably a Dixon of Dog Green fan, because that's what was hitting the highlights on BBC. However, this is Newcastle United, and there's enough histrionics and entertainment in our club to worry about all that was going on. 58-59 tagged onto a year where we survived relegation by the skin of our teeth, by goal average, not difference, average, and sent the Mackhams down. But off the field, there was a massive trauma with the board and rows about how the club was being run. Now, behind the scenes, one of the activists trying to change things was Alderman McKeague. I think that's the first photo you've got.
Yeah, we'll go.
Steve. No, sorry, that's Charlie Minton. That's the manager that Alderman McKeague eventually persuaded the board to appoint. The rows on the board were between Stan Seymour and his mates, who wanted to keep running the club the way they were. Seymour was nominally the manager, but there was actually a group of him and his mates that were deciding on tactics, on teams, on transfers. It didn't go down well with the players, my understanding is, as well as the rest of the board. But the man that was trying to change it was William McKeague. I always think Bill McKeague got a bad press because of his style and more to do with his sons later on than him himself. But he was trying to change. He thought Newcastle, as he put it, should come into the 20th century and have a proper manager, not be run by a committee of directors. And he eventually persuaded the current chairman to stand down, and he took over. And on taking over, he persuaded the board to appoint a manager, and that was Charlie Minton that you see there. Then that's him signing with McKeague standing beside him. And even that wasn't straightforward. McKeague wanted to give him a 5-year deal, and Seymour and his mates got together and blocked it and made it a 1-year probationary deal, would you believe? I mean, you know, how do you run a football club on a 1 year's probation? But never mind, Minton took the job and McKeague became chairman himself. The rows went on to such an extent that at one stage, McKeague challenged Seymour and said, look, if you resign, I'll resign. And then the club can get on without either of us. But Seymour wouldn't have that. He wanted to still be involved. So it was a running battle all the time. And the next pictures are probably more to do with McKeague as well. No, that's Charlie Minton managing his team in South America. Charlie Minton was a very talented left winger for Manchester United in England. He went to the World Cup in the 50s, and it was one of the rebels that didn't come back. Quite a few of them stayed in South America. Neil Franklin, Charlie Minton, and one or two others stayed there and started to manage South American clubs. And when he came back, he was full of new ideas on football and all the rest of it. Well, that's him with his South American team. Next one, Steve. Now, he came to Newcastle with all sorts of new ideas, like doing gymnastics and Scottish dancing and proper stuff on the training pitch, like using a skipping rope. I mean, this was all new to the Newcastle United players, including people like myself who went on a part-time. And the other thing he insisted is that what happened to the first team happened to everybody else, whether it was the captain of the first team or the kids at the bottom like me, the schoolboys. We all did the same, and we all played the same, and we all had the same techniques. The other thing he did was, of course, was to change the strip. I think the next one might be the strip. Well, that's it. Oh, you and I can have a laugh about this one, Steve, because I've had managers on here who have struggled to find them in a tracksuit. Well, there's Charlie Mitten in a tracksuit in his training gear. I mean, some of them like George Martin, they were in Homburgs and business suits and ties, and never seen them in anything like that. But Charlie Mitten at least was on the training ground, and there's the strip he invented. That's the Newcastle United strip invented by Charlie Mitten, and typical. It's funny, exactly the same as the arguments we're having now about the new strip. There's people that love it and people that hate it, and I think by and large now, I think most people are saying how much they like the new strip. Well, this one was the same. There were those that loved it and those that hated it. Now, I've got to say that I loved the shirt. It was a very comfortable shirt to wear. The shorts are all right, but cut a little on the short side for some people. Like, look at Jimmy Schooler's legs, how tight they are on him. But it was a smart strip to wear, I've got to say. But the pain were the stockings. And you can see how lads have got the stockings folded over. In those days, getting them all made in one piece was difficult, apparently. So they used to make the strippy bit separate and then attach it to the leg. And that left a seam. And if you tied your stockings up and got the seam on your leg, on the skin, it used to irritate like hell. And I think that's why you can see they've got the socks turned over, so the stripes are right down their legs, and that's because they don't want the seam on the legs. So, but as I say, it was a love it or hate it kind of strip. I think most people on it that wore it, a bit like me, felt it was smart and were glad to wear it. But as I say, it was a typical argument about either you love it or you hate it. So I don't know what the next one is. I've got Steve. That's a word about William McKeague, why I said I thought he got a bad press. Solicitor, a very clever man, but also a very brave man. People didn't realise that as a 17-year-old, he volunteered for the First World War, fought right throughout the First World War, through Somme, Passchendaele, into Russia, was one of the first teenagers to be commissioned a warrant officer in the army during the First World War. Got numerous decorations of our government and of the Russian government for his achievements as a soldier, and made quite a name for himself. And he had a great love of the Northeast and Newcastle in particular, and got involved in Newcastle United because his family had shares. Next one, Steve. Right, this is you'll enjoy this one, I hope, Steve. This is Alderman McKeague wanted to go to America and look at how they did their sport there, how they ran their clubs, and what the community things that they did. And he got an invitation from a friend of his, who was the guy with his arms folded in front of him, another American lawyer. And so he got this invite paid for by this guy to go and look at American sport, and particularly how they involved the community. And the guy said to him, well, bring a couple of local celebrities with you and we'll treat them as well. Well, if you look over at the far right side, you'll see a very young Gibbo, a very young John Gibson at the far right there.
Yeah, can just see him there,
yeah. And over the top of McKeague's head, that's Len Shackleton, would you believe? Now, what a threesome to go on a trip together. McKeague, Gibbo and Shackleton. I couldn't imagine what it was to be like, but they obviously had a good time. But I read from a piece by Gibbo of the same time that once McKeague went off and did his community business and all the rest of it, he just left Shaq and Gibbo to their own devices. Well, God knows what they got up to, you know what they're like. I bet they had a pretty good time. I think they did. But anyway, McKeague came back with lots of good ideas. So I say the man got very, very poor press most of the time, but his heart was in Newcastle, and he worked very hard.
We've got a couple of team photos now.
Well, that's shown the strip with Norman Smith, the trainer, and the team of the time. That's a good one for me because Alec Tate's in the back, Bobby Mitchell our far right, and next to him Alec Tate, as centre forward, who was my school teacher at the time, or before then, because by then I'd left school, and a good team with George Eastham in the front, who was about to make history in other ways with Newcastle United. And next to Norman in the front is Norman Smith, the trainer, a lovely man. You couldn't help but love Norman, and he was really nice to people. And next to him was Len White, who became our goal machine. And that's the whole 58, 59 squad, everybody, directors, the whole lot. And you can see old McKeague sitting in the front there, as proud as punch, next to Jimmy Schooler and all the others. Of course, Stan Seymour would have to be on the picture as well in the front row, but never mind. But that's the whole entire squad. Now, that frontage, of course, is still the basis of the entrance into the club now. Even though that's the old stand, it still looks very similar now underneath that canopy that we've got there. But never mind. That's quite a good one. If anybody wants to follow up the stuff about McKeague, I've read a book ages ago, and I've dug the title out, and it's the glory of God, Newcastle United and the Great War, and it's written by the club's historian, Paul. I can never pronounce the lad's name. Paul Journeau. Is that how you pronounce it, Steve? Yeah. And it's well worth a read. But there's a huge section committed to Alderman McKeague, which is very sympathetic, and I think deservedly so, because he didn't get a very good press in.
Paul Journeau, club historian, great book.
Yeah.
So we're on to the programmes now, George.
Well, the season started, and Mitten had really sold things, and the city was buzzing for the first game, which was against Blackburn Rovers, I hope. That should be their first programme.
Here we go.
Yeah,
Blackburn Rovers.
Blackburn Rovers. 52,500 turned up for this first game. And typical Newcastle, we got walloped 5-1. 5-1 off Blackburn Rovers. I mean, you couldn't rate it, could you? But they really did give us a thousand. I can remember being in the ground for that match, and what a miserable day. The other thing about it is that while people were dead excited and great expectations of things to happen, there was this. Still had this hangover from the previous two seasons where we seemed to be able to score goals, but we couldn't stop them going in, and it looked like we're in for another treat like that. Anyway, there's some fascinating scores in this series, so I've concentrated on those. Well, we've got beat off Blackburn 5-1, we didn't even score the goal. It was an own goal by Blackburn that we got. But Johnson 2, Dobbin 2. Douglas was a Blackburn, an England player. He scored a couple. So 5-1 with 52,500 in the ground. And very, very disappointing. I mean, it couldn't be more disappointing. Our team at the time had slight changes. Ronnie Simpson had got injured in the pre-season training, and so the goalkeeping position went to Stuart Mitchell, a lad that brought down from Scotland, initially with the hopes he would replace Ronnie Simpson. Stuart Mitchell was in goal. Dick Keith and Alf Michael, the two Irish fullbacks. Schooler at right half. Malcolm Scott, a local lad, at centre half. Jackie Bell, a local lad at left half, who had the pleasure of playing with in the ends a couple of times, and in the A and B team a couple of times. I think I've mentioned Jackie before because he type 1 diabetic. He really had diabetes badly, but but had the good sense to keep himself fit and his diet, and so he made it in the first professional football. And when he moved on from us, he had a great career at Norwich, actually, Jackie Bell, but and a nice lad. So Jackie Bell was there, and then we had Gordon Hughes, the local another pit lad who on the right wing, George Eastham inside him, Bill Curry was centre forward because Len White was hurt, and Ken Hale, another ends player that I played with, was playing midfield on the left, and Bobby Mitchell. But we, as I say, an absolute thrashing is the only way to describe it. And the next one is, I think, is an away game at Blackpool. Yes, everybody fingers crossed. Well, at least we might get something out of this game in Blackpool. But it was fingers crossed. I think after seeing the first game, I didn't know anybody had any major hopes of anything happening. And it's just as well because it didn't happen. We got beat 3-0, and it was 1-0 by John Grayson, and then Ray Charnley and Dave Jury, two international forwards for Blackpool, scored the other two. Our team was much the same as the one that played Blackburn. The only difference is we had two additions in the forward line. That Charlie Minton had bought Billy Wright from Leicester, an attacking player, and he'd also introduced a young ends player who again was my era. I knew this lad very well, called Carl Wilson. He was from up beside Concert, Dells Lane way. He plays for Dells Lane Juniors before he came to Newcastle. Now, Carl made himself famous in the most ignominious way. He didn't get on with the ends manager, Ted Hughes, and I've said some people didn't, some people did. Well, I was playing in a game with Carl. He was centre forward. He was a huge lad, over 6 foot, which pleased Mitten anyway. He'd like these players to be big. But he was also a fitness guru because his father was a professional fitness trainer. So Carl had muscles where most of us didn't even think we had muscles. And in this game, in the ends game, we were winning. We were beating, I think it was Huddersfield in the Northern Intermediate League up at Huntersmoor. We were beating them about 4-1, something like that. And Carl took a shot from way out that flew over the crossbar. And he'd already scored 2. But from the touchline, you could hear the voice of Ted Hughes saying, "That's you, Wilson, showing off as usual," etc., etc. Well, Carl, that was just like lighting the blue touch paper with Carl. So the next time Carl got the ball just inside our half, he turned around and he walloped it into the back of the net. The only trouble was it was in our net, not Huddersfield. It was in his own goal. And needless to say, after the match, there was an almighty to-do between him and Ted Hughes. Anyway, the next time we went for training at St James's Park on the Tuesday night, all the lads were buzzing and saying, "Hey, you heard what's happened to Carl?" So I said, "Well, what's happened to him?" "He's been called to Mitten's office. He's got to go to see Mitten now. We won't see him, I don't think, again." And we didn't. He never come back. So everybody thought, well, after Saturday, that's Carl got the sack. Well, when we did eventually see him, it was in the bloody first team playing at Blackpool in this match. And he was centre forward for the first team in this game at Blackpool. Didn't do any good because we lost 3-0. As I say, Dave Beauty and all the others. It was a game which Bill Perry was the star. He was the England left winger. Stanley Matthews wasn't in the team because he was their big name. But as I say, Carl Wilson got into the team by strange ways, I have to say. Not one many people would like to try. But I think Minton liked these characters as well as him being a big guy. He knew Carl was up for it, should we say? That's what we would say. But it was a strange way to make your debut. The next game I got is I think we're away at Everton the next day. Oh, sorry, no, that's Blackpool. I just like to add odd pictures just to illustrate. On the far left is the famous Stanley Matthews. the great player that he was. You know, he played till he was in his 50s, would you believe? I mean, incredible. But that because he kept himself fit and he looked after his diet and all the rest of it. And as I've said before, had this thing about not necessarily playing at St James's Park. Sometimes used to go home to see him, and you never did. You never did.
So Everton next.
Everton next. So everybody thought, well, oh God, we're going to Everton. And Everton was starting to play reasonably well. They already had a win. We didn't, and everybody thought, well, this is it. This is not going to be good. This is not going to be good. Well, lo and behold, typical Newcastle, we won 2-0. Far from what everybody expected. We won 2-0. John McGuigan and Billy Wraith. Now, John McGuigan was a young left winger that Minton had brought in. Eventually, he hoped to replace Bobby Mitchell. Different kind of player to Bobby Mitchell, but he was quite a good player. So the team that played there was Stuart Mitchell, Keith and Matt Michael again, Schooler, Malcolm Scott, Jackie Bell, Gordon Hughes, George Easton, Billy Wright, John McGuigan, and Reg Davies, the old Welsh international. And Carl wasn't in the team anymore. He disappeared for this one. Everton, of course, had some quite famous players of the time. A fullback called Tansey and Sanders, they were well known. Graham Williams, a Welsh centre half, and John King and Wally Fielden were international players. So quite a good team, and yet we come away with a 2-0 win, and to all accounts, it was an entertaining game, but not for Everton, thank goodness. 36,000 at Goodison Park for that game. Next one is a home game against Blackpool, I think should be the next one.
The next ones we've got are 2 away games, mate. Tottenham and Chelsea.
Oh, right.
Then the home game that you've got next is Manchester United.
Right, I'll put that down there because it'll serve us something. Tottenham, yes, we went to Tottenham in September, and again, because we got something at Everton, people were hopeful that we might get at least a draw at Tottenham, but Tottenham were starting to play well, and were some pundits were tipping them to win the league this particular season. So we went to White Hart Lane, and there was a crowd of nearly 42,000 at White Hart Lane, and lo and behold, Terry Medwin, a Welsh right winger who was a great player in his day, put Tottenham up in 5 minutes, and everybody thought, oh God, here we go again. But lo and behold, just before half time, Len White scored the equaliser. Just after half time, Len White put we in the lead, and just before the final whistle, John McGuigan scored the third one. So we beat Spurs 3-1. And well, you can imagine the relief on Tyneside and amongst anybody that had anything to do with Newcastle United was starting to be palpable. You could feel that there was some optimism again in what was happening. So we came away from White Hart Lane with a 3-1 win in what was an excellent match. Our team was very predictable. Stuart Mitchell, Keith McMichael, Schooler, Bob Stoker was back after his injury with Jackie Bell on the left side of defence, and then Gordon Hughes, George Easton, Len White, John McGuigan, and Reg Davies. The team sheets round that way, but actually John McGuigan tended to play on the left wing and Reg Davies in midfield. But anyway, however they played, it worked because we won 3-1. And as I say, optimism was rising on Tyneside's from that. And then we went to Chelsea. This season is littered with incredible scores, and this is one of them. So we go to Stamford Bridge, and everybody thinks, well, here's another one of the tip teams to win the league. You know, how we're going to do against them. Well, we've already beat one in London, which was something we couldn't do very often and still can't do very often. So we went to Chelsea, and lo and behold, everybody thought, well, give it a go. So 5 minutes, a young man called Jimmy Greaves scored the opening goal. and Jimmy Greaves scored a second after about a quarter of an hour. Ron Tyndall a third, and just before half-time, Peter Bradbrook scored a fourth. And just after half-time, Tony Nicholas made it 5, and Ron Tyndall, just in the middle of the half, made it 6. And, well, you know, it's over, isn't it? But remember, we're Newcastle United. And then suddenly, Billy Wright scored 2 goals within a minute. And then Len White scored a goal. And Reg Davis scored a goal. And then just before the end, Albert Franks, a defender, headed a corner in. And that made the last 5 minutes absolutely frenetic. I mean, you can imagine that the absolute to and fro happening here. Chelsea's 5-0 up, 6-0 up, and in danger of being pulled back to 6-6. It didn't happen. We lost 6-5, but it was a game to remember, and a one that certainly was easy to find information about on the internet because it was such a weird score. Team very predictable. Stuart Mitchell, Keith Michael, Jackie Bell on the front. Albert Franks on the right side of defence. Bob Stokoe, Jackie Bell, Gordon Hughes, Reg Davies, Billy Wright, and Len White was back to partner Billy Wright, and John McGuigan on the left wing. Chelsea, of course, suddenly introducing some of their young stars. Mel Scott, John Sillett at fullback, Peter Sillett in defence, Peter Bradbrook, Ron Tyndall, and of course none other than 18-year-old Jimmy Greaves, who taunted with, is the only way to describe, in the first half. So that was a horrible defeat, but the fact that the forward back was a great deal of encouragement to everybody that was there. The next one, I think, is the whole match against Manchester United.
That's right.
Yeah. That's it. And 61,000.
Wow.
61,000. I mean, yes, they'd lost some of these games, but the entertainment value that was coming back to Tyneside had everybody not quite as like the Keegan entertainers, but it had that kind of feel, you know. Well, we'll pull 5 back against Chelsea. We can do better against others. That kind of feeling, and so there was the feeling that we might actually do something against Manchester United, who, were regarded as still regarded as a strong team. Bear in mind they're just recovering from Munich, and the team's not the Busby Babes anymore. It's a team of almost misfits of people that clubs have allowed Manchester United to have on loan or on fees or small fees and that sort of thing. But they were still playing well. So they came to St James's, and within half an hour, Reg Davis put us one up, and sadly within less than 30 seconds, a young man called Bobby Charlton made it 1-1, and then after that, it was end to end. I remember being at that game, and what a great football game it was, end to end stuff. And interestingly, the Manchester United team had somebody, Harry Gregg, Irish goalkeeper, who became very famous. Bill Fuchs and Ian Greaves, who survived, and Bobby Charlton, who survived Munich. But further down, you had people like Ernie Taylor, who used to play for us years ago in the early 50s, played in the cup final against Blackpool. Blackpool gave Manchester United Ernie Taylor on a free transfer to help them out. And a young left winger called Albert Scanlon, who we several years later, as I say, I've said this before, we occasionally buy players too late. You know, we bought Albert Scanlon on his way out when he should have bought him earlier when he was playing well. He did have some good games for us, but his career was over by the time we bought him. But Albert Scanlon was in this Manchester United team. As I say, a great entertaining game, and we had the same team out as we'd had in London, and as I say, Reg Davis scored the goal. And Bobby Mitchell was back playing. Stoko was back off his injury. But an entertaining game. And as I say, 61,000 approximately playing, in that match. Manchester United, of course, had stuck to their tried and tested management team. Matt Busby is the manager, and 3 assistant managers, Jimmy Murphy, Jack Crompton, and Bill Inglis. Matt Busby managed the team, Murphy the defence, Crompton the forwards, and Inglis was the tactics man. It was an interesting way to perform from Busby, but he never went back to being the Busby Babes again.
Next picture's an action shot.
Right, yes. Typical of Newcastle United, in the midst of a heavy league programme, they, in their wisdom, decided to have a series of friendly matches. And that's a friendly match against Liverpool. And that's Ivor Altchurch, who Mitten had bought from Swansea just beforehand, scoring a goal against Liverpool in this friendly match. And as I just like to put an odd picture in just to illustrate things and let people see how St James's was in those days. So that was a Liverpool friendly.
Next game we've got up is Chelsea.
Chelsea at home. Right. Here we go. And having had the debacle at Chelsea with the big 5-6 score just a couple of weeks earlier, here we are back at St James's Park and wondering what the devil we're going to do with Chelsea this time. It was a good game, but a one that we lost with Harrison and Mortimer scoring either side of half time, and in 25 minutes, Len White scoring a consolation goal for us. But good game, certainly end-to-end stuff with lots to interest the fans, but it didn't necessarily stand up to the high standards of the 6-5 game in London, but still an interesting game. And Chelsea again playing a lot of their youngsters like Jimmy Greaves and so on, which I think was entertaining. But the crowd, I was going to say that the crowd, fortunately, I meant to say, it was another over 50,000 crowd for Chelsea. Bearing in mind that a couple of weeks before they'd walloped with 6-5, you know. So as I say, we weren't winning everything, but the people who liked Mitten's style of football, it was attacking, it was adventurous, and it was going down well, and so it was bringing the crowds back to St James's Park. Next one, Steve, where we're going next?
Portsmouth at home.
Right, okay. I've got me pages all mixed up.
All right, I'll do the adverts whilst you're sorting that out, because it's Portsmouth at home, and then we've got Villa away. So that's where you need to be next, George. Yeah, big thank you as always to our sponsors, Spider Miner, worldwide coverage from the lads, the only cryptocurrency miner that can mine 5 different cryptocurrencies at the same time whilst using virtually no energy, and it's VPN protected. Buy yours now at www.miner.spidervpn.org. Thanks to Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website www.skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to L&G Family Funeral Directors, 01913 897245, and the Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists, www.gohd.com. Thanks to Away Day Clothing as well for being involved in the sponsorship of the show, and a qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wolves and Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, nufcmatters.co.uk. Thanks also to Mr. Vicky's Handmade in Cumbria. You can find more information out about their sources at mrvickys.co.uk or 01768 210 102. Thanks also to Media Arts for all the help with their video technology. If you want to subscribe to the show, hit the NUFC Matters badge in the bottom right-hand corner and you can subscribe for free. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up to like the video, click share to your social media, and drop into the comments box to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans or to post a comment about the show. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and on other podcast providers. Usually goes up 24 hours after the show has gone live on YouTube. If you want to become a member, click join underneath the video, and you can join by making a small donation, or you can spend £25 a one-off fee via nufcmatters.com, or use your smartphone to go over the QR code. It'll take you straight to the membership pack registration. What do you get for £25? Get a scarf, a cup, a pen, a membership card, and entry into the monthly draw. If you're a subscriber, then subscribe and you can get a free car sticker. Just email john@nufcmatters.com to claim yours today. We also support the food bank on the show. NUFC fans foodbank.co.uk is the matchday bucket. It is a virtual bucket. You can make a donation to that any day of the year. Don't forget the Alan Shearer ball is still up for grabs. Go to nufcmatters.com. Click on buy ticket and you can get a ticket for $2.99 and you could be the proud owner of the Alan Shearer ball. We've also got a vast range of t-shirts on sale at nufcmatters.com. There's the bottom one. Get yourself online and buy one today. Don't forget Frank Clark and Gibbo will be at the Tynemouth Surf Cafe on Monday the 5th of December 2022. Tickets on sale now. If you want to take part in the NUFC Matters Super 6 score predictor this season, go to nufcmatters.com. You can join the Matters gang and enter into our own Super League. It's £10 per entry for the season. Cash prize winner every month, exclusive Manager of the Month t-shirt, and a cash prize for the overall season winner, trophy and Manager of the Year t-shirt. Sign up now at nufcmatters.com. Okay, back with George, and he's got his papers in order, and I think we are on to Portsmouth at home.
That's right. Portsmouth at home, having had the improved performances, there was a sense of anticipation that we might get something out of this game, and we did. It was a 2-0 win, and 42,500 at the game, so people were still coming and being reasonably optimistic about what was happening at the club. And 2 goals were scored by Arthur Bottom. The lad was brought from York to help with really his goals saved from relegation. In reality, Arthur scored one in the 18th minute, and then he scored a penalty in the 77th minute to make it 2-0. It was a good football game because Portsmouth played good football, and they had some good players, international players like Jimmy Dickinson, and the Froggatt brothers were now in the forward line, and so it was an entertaining game, even though it was a 2-0. But it added to the anticipation on Tyneside that we're turning a corner. We're actually getting some points, and instead of bouncing along the bottom of the league, we're now bouncing around the middle of the league for a change, which was something of an improvement on the previous 2 years. And I've got to say, Mitten was getting quite a good press at the time because he was providing entertaining football. This is the one for Stu Pennant. The other thing about Mitten was the first team played a certain way, so everybody else, second team, A team, B team, ends, juniors, all had to play the same way. And he had techniques for everything that you did on the pitch. This is where my frustration about throw-ins comes from. Charlie Mitten had 5 ways to take a throw-in, because he, like me, had frustration that sometimes when we were getting a throw-in in the middle, the last third of the field, our throw-in, we take a throw-in, and 20 seconds later, the opponents are shooting on our goal. It was almost the throw-in was against, we're not for. And Mitten used to have these 5 techniques that we used to have to use. And even the juniors used to have to use them. And if a message got back to him, that it wasn't happening. On the training night, he'd appear and he'd lecture all the kids and say, "This is what I want you to do," and all the rest of it. I mean, he was a great communicator, a great teacher, really, in many ways. Didn't always go down well, and I've got a story about that later on as well. So we beat Portsmouth 2-0, and with Arthur Bottom scoring the goals. Then, lo and behold, and I haven't got any pictures or program about this, we'll have another friendly thrown into the mix against Bella Vista from Portugal. Mitten's thinking about this is that in the future, we'd need to know about European football. So he brought this team from Portugal to play us. I think the reality was the Portuguese manager was somebody he used to be a manager with in Argentina. I think there was a personal connection there. Anyway, Bella Vista came and we thrashed them 12-1. So I'm not sure what good it did them, but it must have boosted the lads' egos quite a bit. Len White scored on the 7th minute, 20th minute, 30th minute, 39th, and 78th minute. Reg Davies scored in the 48th minute. Arthur Bottom scored at the 50th, the 51st minute pen, then the 54th, the 57th, and 65th minute. And then a lad called Reg Evans, a left winger who I played with in the ends, added the last one. And they got a consolation goal. For all it was a friendly and against the foreign side, there was still 30,000 at the game. I mean, we're talking now about how great the fans have responded to these friendlies we're having now. Well, I think that's not a bad response to a sort of a one-off kind of friendly with a continental team to get 30,000 to go. But that's typical Newcastle United, isn't it? Just to go against the odds. But throughout this period, they seem to have a penchant for bringing teams in to play friendlies when the team was already run off its legs with a bloody 42-game league programme. But never mind, that's Newcastle United for you. And I think the next one's Villa, did you say?
It
Steve?
is, yeah.
Yeah. Villa was... how can I say? It was always regarded that happened to be a reserve program. I picked. It's the only one I could pick up. Always regarded as a good football game, and the rivalry, because our previous manager George Martin was still their manager when we played them, and we went to Villa wondering what might happen. They were playing well. We were playing well. It turned out quite a good game, but unfortunately we lost 2-1. Len White scored our goal, and a Villa forward who was making a name for himself called Barrett scored both of theirs. And there was 30,000 at Villa Park that day. So not the best of results, but still apparently, according to the press, a good game, and we give a reasonable account of ourselves. The next one I've got is... you've got Preston North End, yeah. We went to Leicester City in between. I'll just talk about Leicester. Leave that one there. We went to Leicester City in between and won 3-1, with Altchurch scoring 2 and Len White scoring 1, and a bloke called Kelly scoring for Leicester. It was Leicester came here. Sorry, and we beat them 3-1, and there was again optimism rising. 47,000 at the game for Leicester. I mean, that's quite a turnout for a Leicester City match. Anyway, Preston North End again. Preston North End away, and we went with some optimism, having had some good results, and people hoping that we might get a result at Preston, and we did. We beat Preston 4-3. With White scoring a hat-trick, 27, 35, 70 minutes. Then Albert Franks scoring from a corner just before the end, which was not the first time he'd done that. And Preston came back with 3 goals. And it was, you can see by the timing of the goals, 56 on Hatswell scored for them, which made it 2-1. And then Finney came and started to tear the place up. Tom Finney, the real star player, and he scored 2 goals in 3 minutes, 72 and 75 minutes. And that really put the sweat on. But Albert Frank scored a header towards the end, and we came out 4-3 winners. Scored deep. The crowd at Deepdale, 26,000, which is quite a difference to the sort of crowds we were used to. And as I say, I've said it before, people need to remember the gates are important because that's where the club's money was coming from. And I think that's part of the reason that we played all these bloody friendlies. The directors wanted to make money. I could be wrong, but I have that sneaking feeling that's what it was about. Because the next week after Preston, we had another friendly in the middle of the week against Munich, TSV Munich at St. James's Park. And everybody was thinking, what's this about? And it was all about... Minton said, we'll need to get used to playing European teams, etc., etc. I think the directors just wanted to fill the coffers up because even that friendly against a then unknown German team, as they were at the time, not known now, there was still a 30,000 gate, which is quite something in those days, and people spending money when there wasn't a lot of money around to spend. They're still just recovering after the downtimes after the war, So an interesting game against Munich, and Hughes, Altchurch, and Eastham scored the goals in what was the report. The paper reports say it was an entertaining football game. The next one I've got, I think, is Manchester City. I think
that's it.
Yeah. Sorry, Steve. I've just shift that out of the way. Manchester City came to St James's, and we always had good games against Manchester City, and of course there was the ongoing rival since the cup final and all that sort of thing. But it was a friendly rivalry, and we'd had some good games against Manchester City, and hopeful that with some of the scores we'd be getting that we might be able to turn them over this particular day, and sure enough we did. Although. Didn't get off to a very good start when George Hanna, who used to play for us the previous season, opened the scoring in about 5 minutes for Manchester City, and everybody thought, "Oh goodness gracious, what's going to happen here?" 55,000 at this game, Steve. So the crowds are coming back. They're enjoying what they're seeing. So Len White equalised just before half time, 2-1 just after. And then George Eastham made it 3-1, and John McGuigan just before the end made it 4-1. So quite a good win against a good team. Manchester City, of course, as a team, they had the German goalkeeper Bert Troutman in goal, Dave Ewan at the back, Ken Barnes at the back, George Hanna in midfield, who used to play for us, of course, Paddy Fagan and Bobby Johnson, little Scotch winger who scored against us in the cup final, and he was. A good little player, dangerous little player. But on this particular day, we just outran them. The team was predictable. Keith McMichael, Albert Franks, Bob, because Jimmy Schooler was injured. Albert Franks, Bob Stoko, and Jackie Bell. And the forward like Gordon Hughes, George Eastham, Len White, Ivor Altchurch, and then John McGuigan. I didn't mention the goalkeeper because it wasn't Ronnie Simpson, who was still injured, and it wasn't Stuart Mitchell. Minton had bought a goalkeeper from Wisbech, who he knew from his days managing Mansfield, called Brian Harvey. Now, Brian was a giant of a man, 6'4" easy, and had shoulders to go with it. A really smart lad in terms of his style, and he had the sort of tousled, neat curly hair which would make the rest of it very envious, I'm afraid. And you could guarantee wherever we played, if Albert was in goal, there was always plenty of girls there. I don't know why, but there was always plenty of girls there. He was decent shot stopper. His problem was crosses. He come out no bother, but didn't always get the ball. My father used to say that about Brian Harvey. He was good, but somewhere along the line, God must have put his hands on hot, whatever that was supposed to mean. And unfortunately, Brian used to drop crosses, willy nilly. It was always dangerous stuff. So we got a 4-1 win against Manchester City. So we're off somewhere else now, I think.
Arsenal, we've got a couple of away games now, Arsenal and Leeds.
Yeah. The Arsenal game, we went with the sort of results we'd had. We went with some confidence this time to Arsenal. But unfortunately, we lost 3-2. And it was a pity because we went down early in the game to a Jackie Henderson goal. Then McGuigan and Altchurch with a penalty put up just after half time. But then Jackie Henderson and Vic Groves put Arsenal in the lead, 3-2. Very entertaining game. 63,000 at Highbury to see Newcastle United, which is quite a compliment, really, I think. And I think it's indicative of what people thought sort of football we were playing, that it was good. Team was exactly the same as the previous one, with Brian Harvey in goal and Altchurch and White up front. And as I say, 63,000 at the ground, I think was quite a compliment to Newcastle United. The next one is
Leeds.
Yeah, Leeds. Yeah, right. Arsenal. And then before we played Leeds, we had another friendly, would you believe, against Origiti. I think they were Icelandic, would you believe? Friendly. We beat them 5-2 with Altchurch, Easton, White and Curry scoring the goals. Now, as you can imagine, most people wouldn't be in the Tyneside, wouldn't be able to pronounce the name, never know who the team was. So the net result was that the turnout was only 18,000 for that one. But again, why stick a non-entity friendly in the middle of your league season? And then Leeds United away, and we unfortunately lost that one 3-2, with Altchurch scoring our 2 goals and 24,000 at Ellen Road for our match. And again, people getting a bit concerned because we're now not just bouncing around the middle of the league, we're slipping just a little bit below. Next one, Steve.
Burnley.
Burnley at home was not quite where I thought it would be, but never mind. Burnley at home was we turned Burnley over in short space of time against we played them twice at home and away, very quick succession, and the home game was a triumph. Is why it's in there. As I said, the number of high-scoring games we had in this season, no wonder people were optimistic, or at least enjoying what they were seeing, because we beat Burnley 5-2, and with something we hadn't done for a very long time, with Bell, White, Altchurch 2 goals, and Eastham scoring, and a Geordie called Billy Pointer at Burnley, centre forward for Burnley, scoring their 2 goals, and he went on to play for England at centre forward. Crowd 43,000, so still the confidence there after seeing the sort of things that we were starting to do. But I say more, I think, about the attractive football that we're seeing.
Yeah.
Next one, Steve.
Blackburn Rovers.
Blackburn Rovers away was a good game, and a game which unfortunately we lost, and it kicked the stuffing out of everybody, I think, because we all expected we would beat Blackburn Rovers. Although I don't know why, because they turned over 5-1 in the first game of the season. They beat with 3-0 with Douglas, the international winger, scoring all 3 goals. He just tore us apart on that day. And
is that an FA Cup game? Because on the programme it's got FA Cup, George.
No, it's not. It's
just a programme from the period.
Yeah, it's round about the same time. It's the only one I could find. Yeah.
Got you. Okay, so your next game is a home game against Nottingham Forest, which is quickly followed by an away game at Nottingham Forest in the programme order that you sent us.
That's right. It's the typical Christmas games, isn't it? One game at home before Christmas, one game away just after Christmas, and they chose Nottingham Forest to give us so that the fans, in the FA's opinion, wouldn't have thought to travel. I mean, that's the thinking, but I can't say that I get the thinking, but never mind. And lo and behold, typical Newcastle, we lost 3-1 to Nottingham Forest with Roy Dwight, Stuart Imlach, who was a fantastic left winger, and Tommy Wilson scoring 3 for them. And just before the end, Bill Curry scored a consolation goal for us. At that time, Forest had Bob McKinley, Billy Gray, Jack Burkett, Johnny Quigley, Stuart Imlach, and Reg Dwight, all current international players. So they were a good side, and we just had the same team out we'd had before. Brian Harvey, Keith McMichael, Schooler was back after injury, Stoke, Jackie Bell, Gordon Hughes, George Easton, Len White, Bill Curry, and John McGuigan. But as I say, 44,000 at this December the 26th match. That's my birthday. Not a very good birthday present, I have to say, losing 3-1 to Forest.
Did we fare any better in the away game?
Well, here it comes. No. It was 3-1 at home and 3-0 away. And Stuart Imlach, the winger, scored a hat-trick. He tore us to pieces on that day. Wasn't our one of our best glory days. We really did get a turnover by them. 40,000 at Forest that day at the City Ground. And they played exactly the same team as they'd played at St James's. And we played exactly the same team that played at St James's. And the result was they scored 3 and we didn't score anywhere. At least at St James's we scored 1. So no, it didn't fare very well. But that was the 2 games, one on the 26th and one on the 27th. So, this idea that that meant fans didn't have far to travel was just balmy. It just didn't work. So then we brought Everton to St James's Park, and everybody thought, oh, we'll beat them there. Hopefully, let's hope that we can turn them over here. And we did. It was an entertaining game, and we beat them 4-0 with Len White scoring 2 in the first half, Ivor Allchurch scoring 2 in the second half, and the team was almost identical by now. Brian Harvey, Keith McMichael, Schooler, Stoke Franks, Hughes, slight change, George Easton, Len White, Ivor Allchurch, and John McGuigan. And the only difference about the Everton team was that got a new manager by now, that John Carey, the ex-Manchester United player, had taken over as their manager. But they had some very, very talented players like Bobby Collins, a Scottish international, Albert Dunlop, the goalkeeper, Graham Williams, the Welsh, and Dave Hickson, the centre forward, became quite famous as what I call a bustling centre forward. He was big and broad and bustled his way through the defenders and shoved them about just to let them know he was here. Something some of our players can't do now. 43,000 at the game, so people were back and enjoying what they were seeing. Next one is
Manchester United, followed on by a very infamous disaster that took place.
Yeah. That's there just more as a memory than anything, Steve. Anyway, we went to Manchester United and we weren't too optimistic because they were playing well and they had the, how can I say it, the sympathy vote was on them because of Munich, and people were cheering for them. But it was a fantastic game. Everything I read about this game was fantastic. That's the old Busby Babes, and just to remember that on that date in '58, all those lovely young men disappeared in an air crash in a pile of snow and flames and goodness knows what. And that's the Elizabethan aircraft that they were on that crashed. He tried to take off 3 times in the snow, and on the 4th time he just didn't make it and hit the end of the runway, which was a disaster. Anyway, we got to Old Trafford, and it ended up 4-4. Fantastic game. Everything I read about this game, it makes you. It's one of those games where you think to yourself, "Gosh, I wish I'd been there." It really was. And Bobby Charlton penalty in 5 minutes. And Albert Quicksall, the old Sheffield Wednesday lad who had take the mickey out for rolling his shorts up. Sheffield Wednesday loaned him to Manchester United as a sympathy thing. He made it 2-0. Just before half time, Al Church made it 2-1. And then Albert Scandon, the left winger, made it 3-1. And 4-1, Dennis Violet hammered one in. And then 68 minutes and 70 minutes, in 2 minutes, Len White scored 2 goals. And then John McGugan, just before the end, with almost the last kick of the game, made it 4-4. What a fantastic game. Everything, as I say, one of those games when you think to yourself, oh, gosh, I wish I was there. But a good advert for football and a good advert for us. And 50,000 at Old Trafford on that game, which, again, I think is a compliment to how we were playing. Where we're going next? Wolves at home. Yeah. And, of course, the problem with having a great game like that is that the next home game, everybody thinks, yeah, this is it. We're going to turn them over. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. No such bloody luck. Typical Newcastle United. We lost 4-3 to Wolves, and threw it away. How many times in this series have I said to you, Steve, we're 3-0 up and we end up losing 4-3? Well, here's another one. Easton, 2 penalties. Len White, just before half time, we're 3-0 up, and everybody thinks, well, we're going to coast this. First kick of the second half, Mickey Lill scores 1. Minute later, scores 2. And Bobby Mason, the attacking inside forward, scores the 3rd. And then just with almost the last kick of the game, Jimmy Murray, the left winger, scores a 4th. So we lose 4-3 with a 43,000 crowd in. I remember this game as an exciting game, a good game, but to be winning 3-0 and to lose 4-3 is really a kick in the guts for everybody. Now, that's Len White scored one of his goals against Wolves in this match. And it kicks the bottom out of your stomach, doesn't it? You're 3-0 up and you lose 4-3 and you think, my God, what's happening? But it's been a theme for the last couple of years with Newcastle in this series that they didn't seem to hold on to a lead and lost 3-0 occasionally. And I think the next one, Steve,
is Preston
North End. That's the one I had down here, I think. Anyway, we'll move on to Preston North End. In between some of those other games, guess what? We have another friendly against a Bucharest 11. And we have we beat them 4-1, and it just as I say, just beggars belief that they would throw another friendly into the middle of the mix. But still, 21,000 turned up to the match. But as I said, it beggars belief. Now, in between just after the Forest games, and I've missed the cup. I missed it deliberately, I suppose. Just after the Forest games, of course, was the 3rd round of the cup, and we played Chelsea, and they beat with 4-1. I mean, it was a thrashing. I remember Eastham scored our goal, but Chelsea just took one to the cleaners, and again, Jimmy Greaves, the young forward, was on high dough and really did make life difficult for Preston North End. Is that the one that we had, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want that back up now, yeah?
Yeah. We hoped that would we would turn Preston over, but we didn't. We lost 2-1. And I think that was a hangover from the cup game because we played so badly in the cup game. It took 2 or 3 games to get back into rhythm, but we lost 2-1 with Ivor Church turning us over the place. Len White scored our consolation goal, and that was a miserable game is all I'd say. It was because the expectation was we might pick up, but we didn't. It was almost as bad as the cup loss to Chelsea. And lo and behold, in between that and the next game, we had an All-Stars 11 visit St James's Park to play a friendly. Now, why? Well, 15,000 turned up because most people were beginning to think, well, what's this about? You know, an All-Star 11, why do we want to play an All-Star 11? What it turned out to be is that Minton had been asked by a mate in the FA, could they send a scratch team up to play Newcastle in a friendly so they could see some of these players in like a sort of an England trial match. Well, that's not how it was advertised. It was just an All-Star 11. And I think Minton said yes, because the directors were happy to take some money through the turnstiles, I think. Right, what's the next one, Steve?
Got a couple of away games now. Portsmouth.
Yeah.
Now, and then Man City.
Right. Well, Portsmouth, as you know, our family used to like to go to Portsmouth because it was a good away trip. And it was a good away trip in more ways than one. We beat them 5-1. And everybody was really cock-a-hoop. Curry 3, Eastham, and a new lad called Taylor from Northern Ireland scored, and Saunders scored their consolation with 20,000 at the game at Fratton Park. And then away to Manchester City, and we thought, let's give it a go. No, we didn't give it a go. Having won 5-1 the previous week, we lost 5-1 at this one. Turned it upside down. I mean, these are all high-scoring games, but so frustrating it must have been. Well, I'm saying
all in the wrong end.
Yes, it bloody was frustrating, I can tell you, because I was around at the time and seeing some of these games. Len White scored our consolation. Joe Hayes scored 2. Barnes scored 2, and Smeatonbrook scored their 5th one. 26,000 at Main Road for that one, and it was a miserable defeat, to say the least. Yeah,
we're on the final furlong of a depressing season. We've got Arsenal at home, and then we've got West Ham away.
Right. Well, Arsenal at home. We fingers crossed wanted a result. The whole place was desperate for a result. Now, I do remember being at this game, and the Gallagher corner was buzzing and hoping that something would happen. Well, we got a win. It was a 1-0 against Arsenal, and Bill Curry scored the winning goal. And you'd think from the cheer from the crowd, you'd think he'd scored a winning goal in the cup final. I can't remember a single goal for a long time getting the sort of cheer that one did. I think people were just so relieved it's something positive that let it all go at once. And still, even after that sequence of on the trot 2 5-1 losses, we still managed to get 44,000 into the ground. I mean, that speaks volumes for our support, I think, more than anything.
Yeah,
and the last one is West Ham away, and West Ham away. We wanted to. There were again. This was another one of these 2 games close together. One away was this one, and we lost sadly 3-0. With Dick Musgroves and Chesney scoring their goals. Only 16,000 at the game at Upton Park. which is not a very big crowd, but miserable for us. And the last one was having been a close away game. We very quickly got the couple of weeks later got the home game at St James's Park against West Ham, and it was a 3-1 win. We're back on song, and Ival Church, Dick Keith, Harry Taylor scoring our goals. Harry Taylor, the young lad from Ireland, and Chesney scoring for West Ham. And sadly, because of the sequence of very bad results, a crowd of only 21,000 this time. I think the fans by now were telling the directors the story of what they wanted. But then after that, we had a decent win against Birmingham. No, had a draw against Birmingham as the last league game, and then a sequence of friendlies against Brighton. 6,000 came to that one. Peterborough United, 11,000 came to that one. And Drumcondra from Ireland, 7,000 came to that one. Evergreen United, 5,000 to that one. And Glentoran, 7,000 for that one. I mean, the teams had a hard 42 league games, and still, whether this was instead of a pre-season tour or what, I don't know, they piled all those friendlies on top of that, which nowadays would have just, well, I think that the players nowadays would have gone on strike.
No doubt about that.
Yeah, they'd have been creating hell. I mean, they create now and they don't play 42 league games, but the upshot of the season was we finished 11th, which, in fairness to the local press, said that for a first season for Mitten, that was a decent season, bearing in mind the to and fro. One of the Mitten tried to bolster the defence, and he tried to buy people like Mel Charles and others. But the trouble was, Seymour still had his cohorts on the board of directors who were vetoing the sales. No, you can't have him. You can't pay that for him. And it must, how Mitten put up with that, I don't know. However, the saving grace for Mitten is that Leeds United, towards the end of the season, came and said to Bill McKeague, the chairman, can we talk to Charlie Mitten? We'd like to sign him for Leeds. Now, that gave McKeague the ammunition to go to the board of directors and say, I'd like to give this man a proper contract. And so they did eventually give him a 3-year deal because of McKeague's persistence. But if it hadn't been for Bill McKeague, I reckon Charlie Mitten would have walked. In fact, I'm surprised he didn't, actually, the way Seymour and his mates were making life difficult for him. And it put a bad taste in everybody's mouth.
I think it's probably put a bad taste in the viewers' mouths as well. We felt every single part of that, George. It was great.
So stuff. 11th wasn't bad at the end of his first season, and there was. I was saying about Charlie Mitten being a great speechmaker. Well, he had a habit of doing it wherever he was. And particularly if we played at Hunters Moor, because there was a veranda in front of the dressing room where it looked like he was making a presidential speech. And he arranged a friendly so he could have a look at some young players in the club. And I was one of those young players. I was playing right side midfield, and George Dalton, who eventually got into the first team, was playing left side midfield. And we were playing a Leeds team, scratch team. I think it was mostly reserves and juniors. And we beat them 4-1. And after the match, he stood up on the platform and said how wonderful it was and paid compliments to players. And I have to say, without boasting, he did particularly mention George Dalton and me. He said, if we can get see him out of the rest of you that we got out of George and Dalton and Mitchell, we'll not go far wrong. And then he said something really peculiar, which he occasionally did. If you want to get in my first team, you've got to stand out. Even if you get your name on the front of the newspaper, that might just get you into my first team. And I looked at my father's face in the crowd and I thought, oh, God, Harry didn't like that. And sure enough, he didn't. So my father disappeared and I didn't know where he was while I was getting changed. And one of the lads said, hey, your old man's having a go at Minton. I said, is he? He says, yes. So apparently what my dad had said to him, Mr. Minton, that was very nice. But if my lad gets his face on the front of a newspaper because of you, I'll come to St. James's Park and I'll kick your arse all the way to Central Station. And I thought, that's the end of your career, George. Goodbye. But he didn't. He never said a word. And Harry just smiled when I asked him about it but that sort of thing used to irritate my father. He didn't like that sort of showmanship. But never mind. Anyway, that's that season. But never dull with Newcastle. Never dull.
No, never dull, George. As always, thank you for taking us through it, mate. Look forward to getting into the next season on the next episode of Those Were the Days. But for now, George, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Steve. Good to see you. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.